Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull, and we're going to just get that chud-lib rotisserie fired up and continue the roasting. There's a video I've been trying to get through for a few weeks now, and I either forget about it until I've already finished something else and there's only like 5 minutes left in the stream, or things happen in chat. So I haven't been able to, but this time we're starting out with it. So there's no way we're not finishing it. Unless it just sucks and there's nothing to be done about it.
Markets. You look at what's going on since the pandemic and after.
Since the pandemic, so that's Caleb is a confirmed pandemic denialist then. Okay, not surprising.
Africa in terms of malnutrition. You look at the rising costs of energy and food. I mean, there's a global economic crisis being fomented by Wall Street. People are dying all over the world, and the left is mad that somebody didn't call somebody the right name.
I think the left, you'll find, is actually kind of mad about both of those things. It turns out you can actually be pissed off. See, the idea here, is that it's just it's the left's fault that all these people are being starved in capitalism, because the left cares about trans people. And you can't care about trans people and starvation and starving people in the global south and elsewhere. Somehow, reasoning unclear.
Enforced by police and military, and we have the power to actually do something about that. But what is going on college campuses and beyond?
Fun fact, the RCP, which this guy apparently represents, the so-called Revolutionary Communist Party, they have a front group called Refuse Fascism. And when Jeff Nia, then a lieutenant in the Portland police, got caught having very cozy relationships with neo-Nazis, and his official mobile phone chat messages ended up being the subject of a Freedom of Information request, there was an interesting text in there from, I forget the guy's name, but he was the head of Patriot Prayer. And he told Nia, and as far as I can tell, nobody else, that Refuse Fascism, i.e. the RCP, i.e. this lot, had approached Patriot Prayer to work together. So, not so much refusing fascism as kind of going along with it, but yeah. So this is not exactly shocking here.
Is people are focused on pronouns. People are focused on...
Of trans people, though.
Look.
I mean, how can...
Yeah. Did you hear that? He said... that was quite... Oh, well...
But millions of trans people die. Yes, they died because someone didn't call them the right pronoun.
Yes, actually, Caleb. That is one of the reasons, because it turns out that when you deny somebody, delegitimize who they are, and they have to put up with that every fucking day, it actually hurts them. Like, there is literally no reason he has to do this. There's no reason that the RCP either have to take this line. This is very much... They have just chosen to take a reactionary stance here. Because there's there's not even a remotely plausible argument for why the one thing is somehow incompatible with the other.
Pronoun. They died because someone made a mistake and unintentionally called them...
Nobody's talking about making a mistake. That's something you just added.
The wrong pronoun, and that caused them to die. Did he seriously just make that argument?
Well, no, actually, you just made that bullshit up. What they were saying is that delegitimizing people's identity causes psychological damage. And you still haven't explained, my dude, why it is that you can't care about trans people, which many of whom are included in that segment of the world's population that is facing starvation and food insecurity and the rest of it, because trans people are disproportionately fucking poor. Why you can't care about trans people and care about making sure that people actually have enough to eat?
Did someone literally just say, but millions of I mean...
No, they literally did not say that. You just made that shit up.
Things are bad for trans young people. I know that, and...
Well, you were making fun of it, actually, very recently, Caleb. You did a whole thing, a whole segment called Woke Trans Hysteria, where you were laughing at the fact that a trans woman who happens to be associated with Answer and therefore can do nothing right, and it's not that I'd stan Answer, to be clear, but everything that she said in the article that he attacked was totally valid. And she said, in Tennessee, it is unsafe for trans people to do any kind of public appearances because the law actually criminalizes that. And he thought that was fucking hilarious.
And there needs to be more services, and bullying needs to be gotten rid of.
Well, that's what we're talking about. That's literally, this is so fucking willful here. They're literally talking about how bullying needs to get rid. And your whole point here, Caleb, is that you can't care about the bullying of trans people and care about making sure people have enough to eat. That's literally your argument. You try to stick to a point for more than 5 minutes at a time, okay?
Needs to be compassion, but did he really just compare people in Africa by the millions?
No, actually. You're the one who's doing that. You're the one who's saying that it's somehow either or.
Dying because capitalism keeps their countries in poverty. I don't even know where to begin.
Now, well, maybe you could begin by accurately quoting it and explaining why it is that you can either oppose the plundering of the third world by the imperialist powers, the capitalist class, or you can care about trans people.
This is true, actually, and he makes the point. We'll get to you. 1 second, we'll get to you. He makes the point, I'm not here to argue about what pronouns people use.
Yeah, exactly. Why do you keep bringing it up? If you're not here to argue about pronouns, then why is it you're obsessed with bringing up pronouns when it's completely fucking irrelevant?
And
why do you keep bringing it up? Oh my god, the fact that you're criticizing my focus.
Yeah, notice he's doing his fucking gay voice. He's doing his patented Caleb Maupin homosexualist voice right here. Yeah, this is how much he cares about the bullying of LGBT people, that when he can't actually even acknowledge that somebody is talking about the subject without using an insulting gay voice. This is Caleb Maupin. He's totally, just a normal communist. Yeah, nothing reactionary going on here. Yeah, you could never think that guy was far right.
Focus means you're racist. Why do you keep bringing it up? Because it's a valid point.
Okay, explain how it's a fucking valid point. Because a second ago you were saying it was irrelevant.
That the USA is waging a war to destroy Russia, to try and...
What the hell does this have to do with anything?
Grind people into poverty, and people are starving, and no one who's a leftist will do anything about it. But
well, actually, Melinda Butterfield, in the completely ineffectual way that Answer does anything, wanted to do something about it and wrote an article that actually you could find nothing to disagree with, except that she called out neo-Nazis who you wanted to share a platform with, and said that trans people are facing a fucking situation of state-sponsored terror in a large segment of the U.S. population. So, yeah.
But God forbid somebody posts the wrong meme, they have their lives destroyed, and they are all calling up their job and trying to get them fired. He's got to.
Yeah, I mean, just because why didn't you lay off the Nazis? That's the real problem here. See, if you lay off Nazis and don't give a shit about trans people, then somehow the hungry get fed.
Valid point. That's why he's bringing it up, is that you guys are not actually fighting against the wars. You're not actually fighting against the wars.
That's not the point, though. This is literally, like, what the hell? Bring it home here. You gotta
low-wage police
throw
state.
us a
You're
bone.
fighting
When does
against
this
working
even
class
fit?
people who do the wrong thing and don't play by your stupid woke rules. That's why he's bringing it up.
Wait,
It's
you
a
just-
big problem. You got
Okay, so which is it, Caleb? Which is it? Is bullying trans people a bad thing, and it's totally just a no-brainer that you should be opposed to bullying trans people? Or is don't bully trans people a stupid woke rule? Which one is it, dude? You gotta choose one, Caleb.
guys are cowards. You're bullies, right? You're more interested in attacking weak people, working class people
Yeah, as opposed to, like, the all-powerful trans people.
who maybe didn't go to NYU and get the proper education than you are in fighting Joe Biden, than you are in fighting Jeff Bezos and the rich. You target
Jeff Bezos is on your side on this.
people that are
The rich are on your side on this. Like, fucking Elon Musk just recently declared that cisgender would be treated as a slur on Twitter. I mean, as part of his attempt to make it even more of a fucking Nazi safe space than it was under Jack Dorsey, who already sucked. Yeah.
are smaller than you, people that don't have the education that you have, people
Like, this guy, are we saying this guy is uneducated? Is that what you're saying here? Because, I mean, he seems to be fairly literate. I think his point sucks shit. But he doesn't seem to be uneducated, and he doesn't seem to be, like, at a disadvantage. He's clearly used to speaking to a member of the public, and look at him, he's finding this amusing.
that don't have the access that you have, people that don't have the woke politics that you have, and you let the system off the hook.
See, what's funny about this is he likes to try to link any kind of concern with marginalized people with liberalism, and yet what he's doing here is a classic liberal move. It's something liberals and fascists agree on. One of a fair number of things that fascists and liberals agree on, which is to pretend that reactionary politics comes from poor working class people and not from rich motherfuckers.
It's a big problem. Yeah, that's why he's bringing it up, and I wish more people would bring this up.
Well, you haven't explained why it's a problem, though. I mean, at first you said that you can't even seem to make up your mind whether it is a problem or whether it's not. You've come, like, you've already done one full 360 on that position. And you still haven't explained why it is that this is, like, you can either care about trans people or hunger.
Because it's a big fucking problem.
And in the quote that Sansara read earlier, Baba Bakian made very clear that the attacks...
See, you'll notice, they'll just call him he, because as far as they're concerned, no idea is valid unless it comes from Baba Bakian. They have a cult of personality that Caleb Maupin must just envy so much.
Attacks on trans people should be, like, vigorously fought.
Oh, very cool. You go.
But look, all the obsession with identity, this is what...
You're the one who keeps bringing it up. We're here talking about hunger. You're the one who's obsessed with trans people.
We're talking about. We're not just talking about the phenomenon here. Is not just people wanting to use their preferred pronoun. I'll use whatever pronoun people want to.
We've got a double whammy here. We've got Caleb Muppet standing fasci transphobic bullshit from the RCP, the US RCP, at the same time as he is trying to promote entryism into the group in order to subvert it. I mean, it's all sorts of interesting shits going on, and Caleb Maupin has now, within just 12 minutes, has espoused two completely contradictory positions and shifted between them twice. He's done a full 360 on whether it's okay to care about whether trans people are being treated well.
us to use. I want.
Right, he's not an asshole, right? If
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. That's why you like him, Caleb.
someone wants one pronoun, he'll do his best to remember to use it, right? To be respectful.
Well, he's fuck you. Like his whole point here is that you can either care about trans people being treated right and having their pronouns respected, or you can care about fucking world hunger.
You know, it is horrific, the suicide statistics among trans.
Why you fucking
And
smiling?
there's no argument.
Absolutely.
He's making another 180. Seriously, get the Dramamine out. This is clearly, we're on the tilt-a-whirl. We're on the ideological tilt-a-whirl that is Caleb Maupin trying to figure out how to triangulate so he can be openly transphobic enough that the Fash understand he's on side, and Jody Brar doesn't get offended. But I repeat myself. But at the same time, can claim that he is somebody who breathes air and drinks water on LGBT rights.
Absolutely, right? You know, there's no reason to be an asshole. We should oppose
Then stop doing it.
bullying. We should.
You just okay. This is twice now. He's gone from saying that it's caring about the bullying of trans people is why people in the third world are starving, to saying, actually, obviously you should care about the bullying of trans people, to saying, yeah, fuck trans people again, to now he's saying, obviously you should get, fucking make up your mind.
should oppose discrimination. We should want people to get the proper
You thought discrimination was hilarious a couple of weeks ago.
care they need. Want people to be taken care of. Let people be who they want to be.
Yeah, tell that to Melinda Butterfield. I mean, literally, I think she agrees with Caleb on more things than I agree with her. But, I mean, he really singled her out for some really vitriolic transphobic shit. And, yeah, despite the fact that they, on the issue that supposedly was under discussion, namely Ukraine, there's basically no daylight between them, except she doesn't think it's a good look to be sharing a platform with literal neo-Nazis. We're supposed to be on the side of all of this discussion being carried out in a vehicle made by the OceanGate company.
Against using preferred pronouns. There's an argument. Hold on.
Yes, you're literally arguing against it. We're not against using people's pronouns. We just think it's why people are dying of starvation. There's literally no reason to bring these two things up together. There's literally no reason. It is absolute nonsense to be doing this. I feel actually silly having to explain this. But everybody in this fucking thing, except for the people in the audience who are rightly just appalled at the quality of this bullshit, are acting like that's a reasonable argument to be making.
There's not an argument. You're not even saying against it.
Hold on. No, it's not. There's an argument over the obsession with it.
What obsession with it? What obsession with it?
Over the canceling of people, and you've got to believe people are being spit on for making mistakes. And
why do you have to believe it? Do you have examples of it happening? See, I'll have to believe it if you can show me that it's actually happening. I don't buy it. And honestly, I don't really give a shit as well. Because if people are bullying trans people and they get a bit of gobbo in the face, I mean, you shouldn't have bullied trans people, because the thing is, when you bully people, sometimes it turns out they're able and willing to fight back. I mean, this is something bullies have found out. It's what the U.S. found out in Vietnam, for example. They thought, oh, we can just steamroll these people, and yeah, no, that didn't work. They got a gobbo in the face.
And people are posturing like that's doing a damn thing to change the world.
Well, it is doing something to change trans people's world. But, I mean, which supposedly you all care about, even though it is the reason that poor people are starving.
You are completely right that the culture and the acceptance of trans youth and trans people overall has everything to do with their mental health. But
yeah, exactly. This posture, it's like, get the fucking, like, the diagram, this argument for me. Like, diagram, put this on a twister mat to explain exactly what she's even saying, because it's like, this whole thing, first of all, it's just so unnecessary. They've deliberately brought something into this that is totally irrelevant, and now, and they're too cowardly. I mean, they're too cowardly to just take it all the way. They have to say, caring about trans. They decided to say caring about trans people is why people are starving in the third world, and then say, oh, but not that we don't think you should care about trans people. But which, by their logic, means that they think people in the third world should die of starvation.
let's be real. If we want to end this horror for trans people, for queer youth and queer people as a whole, for women, for the 8 billion people on this planet who won't have a sustainable planet, we need to overthrow the system. And yes, people...
Like, this is completely... That isn't the point. Like, as far as I can tell, none of these audience comments have suggested that anyone actually disagrees with the idea that we need to overthrow the system. In fact, somehow I have a feeling that people who show up to a meeting of a group called the Revolutionary Communist Party probably are already on that page.
People can do both. Pay attention to pronouns and to the 350 million starving children. Yes, they can. But let's be honest.
Then what's your fucking point? If you can do both, you've been saying you can't do both.
Where do you see anything, and I have to say, to your idea that, oh, revolution, the things I agree with, no shit. No shit.
Yeah, exactly, because literally the only good things you've said are things that anyone who spent 5 minutes in a room with Marxists could have said.
Shit. Where do you see anybody in this country fighting to bring this system down?
Well, and not on this podium.
To overthrow it so we don't have...
Yeah, there's no class struggle ideology. No one's talking about building a working class movement to see.
Well, you don't have a class struggle ideology. He's explicitly said on Twitter, you can go back on his Twitter feed and you find this if you want to subject yourself to it, how he considers his allies in his struggle that he's coming up with to include the capitalist class. So what kind of class struggle ideology is this? Are you saying, I mean, unless you're just saying you're on the other side.
Sees the means of production. All we hear is just a bunch of woke Jewish and Republicans are Nazis and oh my God, women's sports and oh my, yeah. And she says, oh, everything that he hears that he agrees with is no big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is no big deal because it's fucking trivial. Literally anyone could have said that.
It is a big deal because no one talks like legit communists anymore.
Well, you don't talk. You aren't a legit communist. They aren't legit communists. I can't speak for the people in the fucking audience, but I mean, I have more confidence that there are legit communists in the audience than on the podium here.
She's being way more accommodating than I would be. Okay, I might have sounded like her 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, do wear it.
Oh, but my patience has run out, right?
His patience with a fucking ideological conflict that he's made up in his head, where you can care about trans people, or you can care about like starvation and imperialism. See, so I guess by this definition, like Cuba, doesn't care about imperialism and stuff. But like, make it make sense, would you?
Right? She's being way more accommodating than I would be. I'll just tell you that much.
Well, no, that's because she's being cowardly. She does not want to take this argument, this completely nonsensical argument, that she has decided to host a talk to defend. She doesn't want to take it to its logical conclusion. She wants to pretend that you can, on the one hand, say that you can either care about starvation or you can care about trans people, and at the same time say she cares about trans people. Like, that literally does not work. But she's fucking cowardly, so she wants to make it work because She knows that to say otherwise is to look like a ghoul in the eyes of most people.
350 more children starved to death and the planet set on fire. Where do you see that happening? I do not see people doing both. If we did, there wouldn't be that article.
People do both all the fucking time.
What you see instead is people thinking they are doing something, but it's precisely the cancel culture.
Wow, yeah, okay. It's like she's talking about herself and she doesn't realize.
The tear down culture, that you messed up an identity, that you be quiet and follow me because of my oppressed identity.
You're telling people to be quiet and follow you because of your lack of one.
That is not changing the world, that's playing around.
She's absolutely right. It's a way that these people can feel they accomplished something.
You mean like selling little fucking John Brown Volunteers buttons and then handing the money over to you, Caleb?
Instead of fighting the system, they fight Joe Bob, who's wrong.
Yeah, here we go again with this idea that the billionaires who promote transphobia and have turned it into... Yeah, the thing is, Joe Bob, we've got polls on this trans exterminationist shit going on in the U.S. And the polls say the people who vote for Republicans don't like what's going on. Mostly. They think trans people ought to be left alone. They want to go back to the normal racist shit that they're into. They don't particularly give a shit about hurting trans people. That's not why they're fucking reactionaries. This is something coming very much from above, but people like this will make this dishonest move, and you hear liberals do it all the time as well. Yes, Caleb and liberals do get on a lot of things. Where you're supposed to pretend that it's actually like poor white people who are the ones pushing this agenda. But that...
They fight Joe Bob, who said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing. And in a lot of cases, Joe Bob didn't even do anything wrong. Joe Bob just became a target because...
who's Joe Bob? Have you got an example of somebody who didn't do anything wrong and just became a target?
For whatever reason, it's easy.
Yeah, just because he's a fascist, for example.
To fight random dude who did something wrong than it is to fight the system. And these wokes are bullies, right? Bullies never pick on anyone their own size. They target somebody.
Yeah, these fucking woke bullies who are fighting against the governments of the states that cover 68% of the continental U.S. For example, you pick on somebody your own size.
Who's not in a position to fight back. They're cowards. They're too afraid.
They're not in a position to fight. They're literally fucking, fighting back against trans people's existence right now. And you claim, and the thing is, this is why, just for anyone unfamiliar with him, whoever sees this in the VOD or something, because I know everybody in chat probably familiar, the fact that he will claim that he cares about trans people, and then he never has ever once suggested that maybe we should be worried about the safety of trans people given all the fucking trans exterminationist laws that are being enacted, and in fact has laughed at that idea very openly. That's how you know he's full of shit on this. That's how you know that he's a transphobe, like Glinner, but, actually more of a coward than fucking Glinner, because he can't even completely own up to his bullshit.
Of getting arrested and going to jail like the Uhuru movement. They're too afraid of getting their heads busted in.
Yeah, trans people certainly, would know nothing about risking arrest right now. Certainly not.
So
obviously.
They go after Joe Bob, and they let
Who the fuck is Joe
imperialism
Bob?
And capitalism and the low-wage police state off the hook, and it pisses me off.
And there is no argument.
He's pissed off at things he makes up.
A Band-Aid compared to really healing.
Yeah, it's true, and there is no argument. I will say, you're saying it's...
Yeah, there is no argument being made. It's true.
Disingenuous. It's disingenuous to ascribe an argument. Look, there are people...
Yeah, exactly. You cannot ascribe an argument to these people. They have not made one. They have not actually... They are on, PragerU level of rhetoric here.
Well, no, it's true. There are people who get out there and make a point of refusing to use people's preferred pronouns.
Wow, thank you for acknowledging that. Because okay, but you're making a point. See, I'm not sure, Chad. Please weigh in on this. Which is worse, refusing to use people's pronouns, or claiming that using people's pronouns is why millions of people starve to death? I can't really work out whether one of those is worse than the other, whether they're both equally horrible. It's really kind of a dead heat as far as I can tell, but weigh in. Let's hear what you think.
And it's fucked up. And you are right to call that kind of thing out, but
yeah, they're calling they're calling that out when you do it.
Yeah, it is, but like, people are assholes.
No comment.
You know, like, you're right. I mean, okay, I'll be with you. If people are going out of their way to be an asshole to somebody who's trans, and go out of their way to be like, I'm not gonna call you what you.
Yeah, or say openly laughing about the fact that there are entire states where it isn't safe for trans people to set foot for any length of time. I mean, that would be kind of a dick move, wouldn't you agree, Caleb?
That's not nice. But like,
But
people are not nice, folks. I mean, people call people names. People insult.
yeah, well, yeah, and that sucks actually. And let's just note, I mean, Caleb Maupin, he gets called a few things, and mostly those things are just accurate descriptions of what he is. And obviously what he's saying is you should just let that stuff go off like water off a duck's back, sort of like the opposite of what he does, which is to write entire books saying that people who call him out are working for the CIA.
Insult other people. People attack people on a personal level. I mean, it's not okay. I don't condone that kind of behavior.
yeah, he doesn't condone it. He's got the moral high ground here, you see.
But, I mean, is that comparable to 350 million children?
Nobody's even saying it's comparable. Nobody's saying it. Like, literally, the argument that's being made that that you're sitting here trying to reject at the same time as you know it's ghoulish enough that you have to say the opposite at the same time so you have deniability, is that that there's no reason to mention those things in the same breath as if one was somehow detracting from the other.
Dying because of lack of access to medical care because of capitalism and imperialism?
Or say because they're trans and they live in Florida and they've enacted rules that actually have made it virtually impossible for trans people of any age to get the health care they need.
I mean,
Is that
I'm
somehow
against
better?
bullying of any kind. I'm against people being assholes. But
I got nothing.
like
Yeah, that's what that animation is for.
does she have to say this?
Yes, she has to say that because she did not have to act like caring about pronouns and caring about capitalism and imperialism and starvation were mutually exclusive. Having said that, she clearly feels that she has to say it because she doesn't want people to draw the obvious conclusion.
On what planet do you have to even explain this?
On what planet do you have to act as if you can either care about trans people or care about starvation?
People being insensitive and rude is not the same as genocide.
Nobody's saying that it is.
People being insensitive and rude is not the same as mass death from malnutrition and poverty. Like, why? What planet do these people live on where you have to explain that?
They don't live on a planet where you have to explain that. You didn't have to explain that. In fact, you're the one who keeps bringing those things together. You're, like, arguing against yourself. Ja, also ich stimme keinem von beiden zu. Die sind beide Arschlöcher. Caleb stimmt eigentlich mit dieser Frau von dieser Sekte RCP überein. Und also ich finde beide durchaus hundertprozentig unverdünnt scheiße. Die sind beide scheiße. Die sind beide Arschlöcher, sind beide Reaktionen. Decided to... Yeah, that's a horrible freeze frame too. There, I'm back. Excellent.
Disingenuous to say that's what's being done in this piece. There's
It is literally what's being done in this piece.
something being done precisely to get under people's skin, and I'm glad it got under your skin in
It got under your skin because it sucked.
a good way, and I hope you think about it and others do too.
But the point is that there's literally no thought required in order to see what bullshit this is.
Saying, where are we focused? That's where he began. What is the big picture? Where are we focused?
So as you can see, this was
That was a great interaction. I thought that was tremendous.
Of course you did. You suck.
And there's more. There's more. I think this is great. This is really, really great. And I love this. I am gonna promote this, right? And I don't think the RCP people necessarily like me, but I don't care.
I mean, there's the only reason they would actually dislike him is that he's trying to start his own cult of personality, and that contradicts their aim of subjugating the entire world to Bob Avakian thought.
Right? The fact that they're saying this, right? The people who led the Stop Trump's a Fascist campaign, that they're out there saying this. I mean, if anybody, them saying this is a big deal.
No, this isn't a big deal. Because they did not lead that campaign. In fact, they undermined that campaign.
So let's continue.
This system, with what its militaries and occupations and terror and torture around the world, you actually have to bring that down.
Nobody is disagreeing with you.
There's no other way. So to do that, and this gets to the brother who asked the question about why is revolution more possible now. Raphael was talking about a big part of this. I just want to underscore it because we're living in a rare time.
And this is where she gets completely off the rails.
Oh, now I'm interested. Now I'm actually kind of interested.
I mean, this is where I really disagree with her. I mean, and it's painful for me to listen to this because it's like I'm listening to someone who's so right and they're also so goddamn wrong. And this is where she goes off the rails, but I want you to hear this.
And the person who left early about we're going, could be the Holocaust in that exact form. History doesn't repeat itself, but we are heading towards something horrific.
I agree. Yes.
Wait, I think, okay. I give up.
Capitalism when it's in crisis. If you don't, the only way they can get out of these crises, the Communist Manifesto says, is by degrowth and reducing the population.
Where does the Communist Manifesto say anything about degrowth?
More thorough exploitation of the markets and conquest of new markets with war. So she's right.
Like, literally, the one fucking book by Marx he seems to have read at all is the Manifesto, and he's just making shit up here.
Right, this system is heading toward a major catastrophe, Holocaust-like events, wars, etc., to try and save their system. Fascism is saving capitalism from a
Yes, that's right, Caleb. You're saving capitalism from itself.
Crisis of overproduction with mass destruction, death, and terror. That's what fascism is. So she's right about that, but she gets crazy here. We'll just keep listening.
The Christian fascists who took over the Supreme Court.
Oh boy, the Christian fascists who took over the Supreme Court.
Oh, well, these are the people he doesn't want to see bullied because that's like picking on people who aren't your own size because. That's just 9 infallible god emperors who can't be fired and get to decide unilaterally on whether we get to have any legal rights. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't want to target people like that.
Court. Oh boy.
They're not stopping. They are really going for Handmaid's Tale.
How's that?
It's going to be
well, maybe by overturning Roe versus Wade completely apropos of fuck all. maybe just all the reactionary shit. I mean, like Sam Alito, actually, when he was still on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, in the Casey case that ultimately ended up in the Supreme Court, where it was fortunately reversed, he wrote an opinion where he argued that adult married women should have be subject to as much control by their husbands as children are by their parents. He literally argued that. And Republican appointee Sandra Day O'Connor said that that was disturbing, which is, like, putting it fucking mildly. So, yeah, these are worrisome people. I mean, fucking one of them had a group when he was at university called Fascism Forever.
A nightmare. The planet is burning up. The horrors of what climate destruction has already done to
Oh, good Lord. Oh, good Lord. You do realize that they're planning more mass deaths in the third world. They want to, stop
who's they?
development in the third world and kill more children in the third world. And they're saying we have to accept it because of climate change. You do realize that, right? Climate change is the main argument they're using to push degrowth in the developing world.
That's not what degrowth is, though. I mean, he still has not bothered to look up what degrowth is. He does not know what the fuck he's talking about. The last time I saw him talking about degrowth, he was talking about how a bunch of large landowners owners in the Netherlands were fighting against the system because being required to use more climate-friendly fertilizers was degrowth, and that the people of Africa were dependent on the agricultural exports of the Netherlands. Chief amongst them, cheese and cut flowers.
Sarah.
Latin America and other countries where people are fleeing, and then the nightmare being unleashed by Border Patrol, by all over the world, the camps people are piling up in. The nightmare that is happening for humanity on a global scale that most people are not looking at and thinking about in this country. We are...
Oh, fuck you, Peter Coffin. Yeah, Peter Coffin's in the house. We got a fucking good take incoming, I'm sure.
Living in a time when the ways that people have been accustomed, you said this system's gone on for a long time, people have been accustomed to accept this system as legitimate.
So, like,
because
okay, she says a bunch of transphobic shit, and Caleb Muppet is just right with it. And then she actually says some halfway decent things, and this is where he's freaked out.
Played by certain rules. There's been peaceful transfer of power. Maybe we don't like certain things, but at least...
Nee, also ich stehe auf einer Seite, ich stehe auf meiner Seite, aber wenn ich mit... aber von den beiden stehe ich auf Seite von keiner. Also die sind beide scheiße. Ich bin halt dagegen. Ich bin auf der Gegenseite, auf der Seite bin ich.
We have a say so, and at least we have peaceful transfer of power. Well, that's being blown up.
Not by Trump. Not by Donald Trump. If you think that January 6th was an attempt to prevent peaceful transfer.
That was explicitly what it was. It was explicitly, the whole point was to intimidate Congress into reversing the fucking result of the election. Now, the only reason that it's silly to talk about peaceful transfer of power in the U.S. is because there's never any transfer of power. There's never any meaningful shift. You do not get... even on the level of quite a few other countries, just bog standard capitalist countries, where there will be more daylight between one government and the next than there is between the Democrats and the Republicans.
Transfer of power, you're delusional. It was a rowdy protest. It was a bunch of Trump supporters went into a building they weren't supposed to go into and farted in Nancy Pelosi's desk chair. It was not an attempted coup.
Yeah, they brought guns, they brought zip ties, they brought a whole bunch of shit, and their stated aim, again, this group of neo-Nazis, many of them cops, was to actually literally force the Congress to put their guy into the White House.
Coup.
Look what happened in Tennessee. This is happening. It's escalating by the week. Tennessee, students get massacred. They do a walkout. 2 junior state representatives stand with them, 3 actually. 2 of them are young and black, and the fascist majority of the Republican State House says, doesn't matter that you were elected, you are no longer representatives.
Montana, too.
Yeah.
Then they did it, exactly, I was going to go there next. Then they did it last week. Fascists looked at it, ooh, new play. We're going to put the...
Yeah, and like a bunch of Trump supporters are in jail for walking into the Capitol building.
Oh, fuck you! We like seriously. This is gonna be his. Is this gonna be his fucking argument for everything now? Yeah, but I mean, you can't. You can't criticize the state for doing horrible things to people who didn't actually break any laws or do anything even remotely violent. Just protested. But since there are people in jail for neo-Nazis in jail for trying to reverse an election, which is literally, it's just the Laurel and Hardy version of the U.S.-backed coup in Bolivia a couple of years back. It is literally what it was, just not done as well because all they had was the support of the D.C. Metro PD and some of the Capitol Police, whereas the original version, basically the entire military establishment was on side.
When the police told them to. The Uhuru movement are facing 10 years in federal prison for sharing articles about Ukraine. This is a group of black revolutionaries.
Yeah, the charges against them are bullshit, but that doesn't change the fact that Uhuru is a nasty, abusive cult.
You know, I mean, yeah, the political stakes are certainly escalating.
I would very much recommend checking out Black Anarchic Reacts. Sanjata is his name, and he's done some great streams laying out exactly what is fucked up about Uhuru and their entire organization. Highly recommended. His like specialization, it seems, in streaming is to look at these political cults and break down what they're all about.
Right now,
and
the Republicans
are
playing hardball, the Democrats are playing hardball, but the Democrats clearly have the upper hand, Sincera. The Democrats are the ruling party right now, and they are the ones that are marching us toward World War III, and they are the ones marching us toward a police state. They're the ones torturing Julian Assange. It's like,
except they have company in that. Do you see the Republicans actually opposing any of that shit? No, because they're on side. They're basically the same party. They're two wings of the same fucking party.
Republicans are doing bad.
Like the Republicans are trying to exterminate trans people right now in much of the country. The Democrats, who are the ruling party, who have all sorts of mechanisms at their disposal in order to stop that, are not doing that. That, with some honorable exceptions at the state level, but those just go to show how absent the most powerful segment of the Democratic Party actually is from any of this struggle.
That shit too, but that's because we're entering divisions in the ruling class and political warfare.
God, he just doesn't understand anything. Divisions in the ruling class isn't some sort of specific period. The whole reason there is a state, and this is just basic Marx shit right here. James Connolly said it, like, practically, pretty much every communist that you can read will have said some version of this, is that the whole point of the state is to try to paper over the contradictions between the capitalist class and the working class, and to resolve conflicts between capitalists, because capitalists don't always have the same contingent interests, even if they share the same class interests as against workers. He acts like that's some sort of big novel thing, that there's a conflict in the ruling class. There's always a conflict in the ruling class. You wouldn't need political parties in a capitalist system if there was no conflict at all in the ruling class.
In our playbook, they passed a fascist trans law there, and the trans representative, look, I don't think you can solve this with reforms and by entering this system, but this trans representative got up and said, when you go home and pray tonight after passing this law, I hope when you look at your hands, you see the blood of trans youth on them.
That wasn't Tennessee, that was Montana.
Because you're absolutely right. The death rates, the suicide rates.
This is great. She's like trying to position herself on the right side of this now. But she started out, the whole thing that everyone was objecting to in this dialogue was this idea that caring about trans people is to blame for there being world hunger. Like, that was the whole argument. And she spent the entire time trying to just back away from this article that her dear leader wrote, and that they therefore have to defend, even though very clearly I mean, at the very, I mean, being as charitable as possible, she's uncomfortable with the line he's taking.
This is what's going to happen.
She's trying so hard to say, look, I'm on your side, guys, but you have to have common sense, right? She is pandering so hard to these wokes. But
she's just acknowledging fucking facts.
but they're still going to cancel her, right? It doesn't matter.
Well, because what first of all, fuck you. Canceling isn't a thing. Second of all, what she said still sucks. The fact that she's trying to like make everybody forget that she said it doesn't make it suck any less.
You can bend over backwards.
I mean, she said something that Caleb Maupin cheered. That if you say something and Caleb Maupin applauds you, you fucked up.
For these assholes, it does not matter. No matter what you do, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're a white supremacist. If you're not,
well, you just because you go and share a platform with some of the people who killed people on at the Charlottesville pogrom.
Not pro-imperialist, if you're not part of their little Democrat Party fan club, look how hard she's pandering to them. Do you think any of them are going to stop calling the RCP a cult? Do you think any of them are going to...
Okay. See, we're not actually talking about that right now, and you're repeating yourself, and you clearly have not actually bothered to look at this, to look into this. You're just using the same nonsense talking points. Because... There we go. Like, he literally has just, or they, I don't know, literally just comes in and says this exact same shit, never bothers to check anything out, just misrepresents things. I mean, and then it's just, this is the reason we didn't get to actually discuss this in the first place. And Radio Free Asia is not a Western sold-out org. It is literally run by the U.S. government. It didn't sell out. It is literally an agency of the United States government. Like, seriously, if you don't know that, then you really should be a little bit more careful. Because you clearly have a lot to learn. That is literally a United States government propaganda operation, just like Radio Free Europe or Radio Liberty.
Stop,
but we're not talking about that right now.
But look how hard she's pandering. It doesn't matter.
She's not. She's just acknowledging fucking facts that any decent person is worried about. Like, and you just said, I mean, like, this is this fucking 360 he keeps saying. He's done it twice now. Now he's in his, like, third turn. Where, on the one hand, he says, well, obviously you don't want to... It's bad that bad things are being done to trans people. And then, now apparently just acknowledging how bad that situation is pandering.
They said, oh, out with you.
Last time he...
This is not a democracy. Look, he's right. The democracy was always a cover for a class.
I mean, last time he left, left 3 comments on last night's stream, on the VOD of it on YouTube. Liar, and pants on fire. I mean, the just...
dictatorship. But right now, the ways that people have been conditioned to accept this system are being ripped up. And what it is mainly leading to is the fascists are on a tear, and people in this country with their American privilege and their comfort are...
Their American privilege and their comfort. While they're losing their jobs, while they're dying from opioids.
Yeah, it's called imperialism, Caleb. You occasionally pretend to be against it.
While their children are in jail at the highest rates of incarceration in the world. While they...
Yeah, tell us, Caleb, just out of curiosity, any demographic tendencies in that prison population? I mean... does anything jump out to you about who's getting locked up?
Electricity isn't even working in parts of New England. Their American privilege and comfort, is that what you're talking about, Sincera?
Like, literally, I mean, when you talk, I don't like the term American privilege. I think it actually, I mean, we just need to just call it what it is. It's imperialism. And part of the reason that this pandemic still isn't over is precisely because, despite the fact that the U.S. is the country hardest hit by it, and that any fucking public health policy, like if you were going to block visitors, block incoming flights from any one country, if you wanted to try to get the pandemic under control in your country, it would have to be the U.S. But nobody dares nobody dares ban incoming flights from the United States because the U.S. would have a fucking shit fit over.
Really retreating inward to themselves. They're hiding from this reality. And you have a situation where the fascists are on the march and the decent...
Tell us about how that time that your group decided to try to make a deal with Patriot Prayer, some of the fascists who are on the march.
And Joe Biden is the fascist.
Literally.
He wants to set up a low-wage police state.
Well, he keeps on saying that, like that isn't already what we have. There already is a low-wage police state. It's been years since we had a super inflationary minimum wage increase. The fucking cost of living is through the roof, and the only thing that anyone's interested in spending money on is cops. The police state's already there. The low wages are already there. You're like 20 years late to the party here.
He wants to march us into World War III. He's trying to make it illegal to...
I didn't use any outlets to make any case against China. Literally, the only reason I've ever actually talked about China is that somebody... I didn't use any outlets to make any case against... I've literally never done anything on the subject of China, except to point out once that Bad Empanada referred to... looked at Chinese official sources and said that based on what they said, what was going on in Xinjiang was a cultural genocide on the same level as the residential schools in North America. I've never actually... I'm not trying to make it... I think it is a distraction to spend so much time on it. And I think the reason the U.S. actually brought up what was going on in Xinjiang at the time they did was specifically because they wanted to talk about somebody else's concentration camps. So, yeah, I mean, nice try, 007.
To question U.S. foreign policy. He's trying to imprison the Uhuru movement. They're torturing Julian Assange right now.
They're torturing a lot of people, actually. They're torturing a lot of Black Panthers. There are a lot of black political prisoners who've been in there for years, for decades. He never talks about them. Except once in a while, he will refer to them in the exact same breath as he talks about the fucking white nationalists from January 6th.
Oh, sorry. Who supports Julian Assange, Sansara? Your party supports Julian Assange. I've seen members of your organization go to Julian Assange events. Carrie Lake.
Well, I mean, your guy doesn't support him. Like, the Republicans were in power for 4 years, in charge of the executive branch. They could have, if they gave a shit about him, they could have pardoned him. They could have just dropped the charges and there would have been no reason to hold him if they gave a shit. Like, I mean, he's trying to, now he's just moved into just full-on standing Republicans. And it's interesting because it's one thing to say the Democrats suck. It's one thing to say the Democrats and the Republicans agree with each other more than they agree with most of the population of the U.S., which is a true statement. It's another thing to say that the Republicans are somehow the better option, which they, very clearly aren't, even to the extent that you can meaningfully call them an alternative. when in fact they have always kind of worked in tandem. I mean, the Democrats are the Republicans are the ones who make everything worse, and the Democrats are the ones who refuse to make anything better. But he's just outright standing the Republicans at this point, and it's interesting.
Just made a Facebook a tweet supporting Julian
A Facebook tweet.
Assange. Carrie Lake, the Trump Republican in Arizona, supports Assange.
Who gives a shit? Nobody in your audience has heard of Carrie Lake, the Trump Republican in Arizona. And Trump himself very clearly didn't. The Republicans clearly didn't. They're not doing anything for him. They could have done stuff. They've had, literally a decade in which to somehow intervene on his behalf. They haven't, because they don't they don't give a shit about the fact that he's fash, that he's connected to a neo-Nazi party in Australia. They don't give a shit that he's a fucking nasty misogynist or any of the other shit. All they care about is that he helped air the dirty laundry of the U.S. government, and the Republicans don't like that any better than the Democrats do.
Right? Marjorie Taylor Greene supports Assange. Sarah Palin supports Assange. Joe Biden is prosecuting Assange.
Yeah, Trump was prosecuting him too. You seem to have forgotten that.
How much do I need to wake you up on this, my dear?
Well, maybe you should wake yourself up a little bit more, because you kind of skipped over 4 years.
People have their heads up their fucking asses and are laying down for this. And why are we taking on woke, and why are we challenging people? Because
to taking on, see, now she's having to pivot around. She just, this is the sort of, knots you end up tying yourself in when you want to try to join the reactionary anti-woke brigade at the same time, without actually just openly saying that you're a horrible person.
decent people are playing around canceling each other over petty shit.
She's right about that.
Rather than facing this real horror and standing up to it. But
the real horror. Okay, so, but the thing is, in that sentence, the oppression of trans people is somehow both petty shit and a real horror.
But the real horror is not coming from the Republicans.
Well, some of it is.
Sarah, it is coming from the Democrats. The Republicans are just trying to fight it off.
No, they're fucking not. Well, show me one thing where they're actually trying to fight anything off.
You look at Trump's
he's so
administration,
masked off
it was
right
just
here.
an attempt to kind of hold back to some degree what was going on under the Obama administration. You know, I mean, we've got a new war with Biden. I mean, the Trump administration was just kind of a libertarian administration, deregulating
Yeah, well, what the...
things and trying to some degree to not be as hawkish. And
Except that's not true. I mean, they bombed Syria. They continued the war until the very fucking end. All of them. They actually made U.S. anti-refugee policy even worse. I mean...
failing. Whereas the Biden administration is actively pushing degrowth, actively...
No, they're not. Like, Biden has been bragging about fossil fuel extraction records that he's broken. Even as the IPCC keep on, like, begging somebody to return their calls because things are getting kind of fucked up.
pushing austerity, actively marching us to World War III, actively imprisoning left-wing voices like the Uhuru movement, actively prosecuting Julian Assange, actively censoring...
Wait, he still hasn't said a thing about Stop Cop City. He keeps on talking about, like, imprisoning activists and things like that. Fucked up shit is going on in Georgia right now. And, I mean, just in case anyone in chat hasn't heard all of it, let me just... Okay. First, they murder a pacifist activist who went by the name Tortuguita. Then they lied about that, claimed that Tortuguita had fired first. And it turned out, no, obviously not. They killed him. They killed them. In cold blood. Then they decide to charge protesters with terrorism based on nothing except that they had a legal aid phone number written on their hands so that they could get legal representation. Then they fucking criminalized the bail fund and charged the locked up the fucking operators of the bail fund in Atlanta. And then actually now they've also they're holding some activists who were just leafleting in the neighborhood where Tortuguita's murderer lives to say that the person that they're living near Tortuguita's murderer. And now various activists who are involved in that leafleting are now have been locked up for like a fortnight, maybe a little bit more. I forget exactly. Like, he's never said a word about any of it.
Censoring the internet and manipulating social media to push their agenda. I mean, yes, there is a fascist horror, Sincera, but it ain't coming from the Democrats. But it ain't coming from the Republicans.
Well, no, it's coming from both of them. I mean, this is just like reverse liberal. This is like the other side of liberalism. He's like making the normal liberal argument for why you absolutely must vote for the Democrats no matter what they do, except he's just reversed it and made it the argument for the Republicans. I mean, this is just straight up liberal bullshit.
It's coming from the Democrats.
We're in a time when, because the norms are being ripped open, there are big questions being forced open, that if we got serious,
and she's right about this. She's right about all of this, except she's got it backwards.
if we got organized, if we spread this, we are the Revcom's mission. Read it. This is what we're doing. We're spreading it to millions right now. We need.
No, you're not. I mean, millions. I would say probably the number of people who have even heard of them is high five figures nationwide.
To be able to work together as you're learning about it. Get this out there. Let them know there's a different way we could be and work together, debating.
Yeah, including debating with yourself, because you can't seem to decide whether it's a bad thing to care about trans people or a good thing.
We could be reaching millions in a time like this. And the other thing that makes it a rare time, that actually speaks to why a revolution, how it could be made in a way that is not normally possible, is that the divisions among the rulers go down through every part of society.
See, and this is where I have to disagree, because I think there isn't. The divisions are actually, in a lot of ways, very much superficial. Because, like, for example, if there was a real division between the segment of the ruling class represented by the Democrats and the segment of the ruling class represented by the Republicans, you wouldn't see the Democrats voting more cops, voting funding for more cops at a time when, the segment of the ruling class that are represented by the Republicans are basically declaring war on reproductive freedom and trans people. That sounds like they're actually in broad agreement. Like, there's no sign. Like, I mean, when Biden came into office, he has not actually changed a single damn thing that Trump did. He has made a lot of it, I mean, except to just take it to the next level. He has taken a lot of it to the nth degree. There's very little daylight between the segments of the only real difference they seem to have is precisely that some of them actually think that they ought to run things, and some of them think that they ought to run things. I mean, that's basically it. I am having weird connection things going on. Okay, let's resume.
Including among the population and also within the institutions of the state.
Exactly, and you're on the wrong side.
Like, how do you decide which one is the right side, though? Because you've ended up with a really interesting choice.
Including their armed forces and their institutions of repression. They're not...
Those are, like, literally the two least divided areas. Like, the cops are very firmly on the far right. They are basically the only stable political base, the only, like, stable mass political base fascism in the United States has. Like, they represent the majority of the people who will turn out in support of fascist groups. And the military, they're not meaningfully divided. Fuck off.
All half of them for revolution and half of them for fascism. But
No, they're not. What the hell? Like, I'd love to see where she gets the idea that there is 50% of the U.S. military who are interested in the revolution.
when you have fascist laws and you have half your military, or 80% of it is people from among the oppressed, who are being called out. Look, there was a little window. I'm going to give 2 examples, then we're going to go somebody who didn't raise. Yeah, you hadn't spoken yet. During 2020, it's very interesting, and this is an indication of what makes this a unique time. When the National Guard was called out to Washington, D.C., and the U.S. military with the Black Hawk helicopters in D.C. so Trump could walk across and pose in front of the church, a lot of those National Guard are black, Latino.
And they fucking followed orders, didn't they?
A lot of the black guardsmen were ashamed to tell their families what
Yeah, but they still did it, is the point. They still fucking did it.
they were doing, that they were there to police the Black Lives Matter protests.
Well, what did they think they were going to be doing when they joined the National Guard? That's what it's there for. That's literally what it's there for. It's not a new thing that the National Guard shows up when working people or black people or black working people or whatever show up to oppose the way that they're treated by this regime. That is literally what the National Guard has been doing from the start. Like, I mean, who cares if they were ashamed of it? They still did it. That's the point. That's the point. That's how little their shame, to the extent that this is even true, what she's saying, how little their shame is worth.
And you see how even their own armed forces, during Vietnam, the armed forces split apart. During the Vietnam War, after they were getting their asses kicked, it was an unjust war. Huge numbers of people. There's a film, Sir No Sir, about the rebellion within the military. They couldn't deploy their military because.
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing like that going on right now. There were some things that looked like they could move in that direction at the beginning of the invasion and occupation of Iraq. There was some very interesting stuff in that regard in those days. But, if there's some sort of major division in the military right now, this is the first that I'm seeing anyone talk about it.
Biden is more pro-war.
They're both equally pro-war. There's no fucking anti-war party, you fucking dickhead.
Biden is more pro-war. Trump wants to cut off aid to Ukraine. Biden wants to send more weapons to Ukraine. How can you invoke the anti-war movement?
Jesus. I mean, he's just turning into a fucking Fox News-shaped corn cob.
Democrats are more pro-war. Like, how can you say this with a straight face? Oh my God. Seriously. The Democrats are more pro-war. You're invoking
You said that already, dude.
the anti-war movement. The Democrats are more pro-war.
How many more times are you gonna say this?
The soldiers who would refuse to fight in the war would be Republicans.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't, because the Republicans are also pro-war. Like, the fact that somebody opposes a war that is being presided over by one party doesn't mean that they like the other party. It could very well mean they don't like either of them.
Oh my God, how hard is this to understand?
Apparently, it's pretty hard because you still don't seem to get it.
Who did all this? The soldiers that were anti-war. What candidate have they donated overwhelming to?
None, actually.
Ron Paul. Oh,
Who? Based on what? When? Also,
my God.
like when the hell is he talking about? Is Ron Paul even running right now? Let me just check that because I haven't heard his name in ages. Is he a candidate? No, he isn't.
Have you not listened to anything? All this fascism crap that you're repeating, Trump's a fascist, everyone's a fascist, that's what they're saying about Putin to justify World War III.
And the thing is, actually, they're not wrong, though, is the thing. Because what's going on in Ukraine is that there is a divide in fascism. You got fascists on both sides of that shit. You got neo-Nazis on both sides. Because the thing about fascism in Central Europe and the former Soviet Union is that a lot of the fascists there are anti-Russian, because that is just that is sort of the nature of nationalism in those places. Whereas a lot of the fascists elsewhere actually have a different attitude towards Russia. They find, Russia to be a potential ally. That's the and so, yeah, I mean, it's fascists all over the place. Like, Wagner, the fucking Wagner group, they're fascist fuck. And so is a substantial segment of the military in Ukraine.
That's what they're saying about China to justify World War III. That's what they said about Gaddafi. That's what they said about Assad. Oh my God. My God, she can be so right. She's right about everything except she's on the...
She's right when she's saying things that suck about trans people, but when she's actually taking a halfway decent stand on the issue of, the risk of fascism, yeah, he loses his shit. Like, not that he has any, reactionary sympathies, mind you.
The wrong side.
He's just a normal communist who feels personally attacked when people say bad things about Republicans. Just a total normal communist, just like we all do.
If there were a civil war in the United States between the Trump supporters and Joe Biden and his administration, what side do you think Russia would be on? What side do you think China would be on?
And who gives a shit? I mean, if there were that sort of a civil war, which there wouldn't be, that's not how that would work. Because that's not how civil wars work, in the past couple of decades, for the most part. We're in the age of low-intensity conflict, and the way civil wars work looks a lot more like what went on for 30 years and has never really ended in the 6 counties in the north of Ireland, where you have a bunch of state-supported fascist paramilitaries attacking communities from which opposition to colonial rule is present or suspected, and just sort of running around like death squads with, carte blanche to do whatever the fuck they want. No need to worry about the cops and all that sort of thing. And that's already going on. And it's not against Biden. It's if anything, it's just against working people. It's against people of color. It's against black people. It's against indigenous people. It's against LGBT people. And it's against, basically, interestingly enough, everybody the cops don't really like.
What side do you think Iran would be on? What side do you think Cuba would be on? What side do you think Nicaragua would be on? What side would the people of the world be on?
They would probably be against both sides if those are the options.
What side would the majority of Africa be on?
Literally no one in his audience could give a cogent answer to this question. I mean, and notice that it's like this idea that you have fascists versus Joe Biden. First of all, that's not going to happen because Joe Biden's actually cool with them, is doing nothing to stop them. In fact, has been criminalizing their political opponents. So this is already a fucking fantasy scenario. And then the idea, he's trying to say that the people of the world, between a bunch of fucking white nationalists and fucking Joe Biden, they would say, oh, totally, you gotta go on team white nationalist there. And that's not how that works. I mean, what the fuck? This has gone way off the rails.
How can you say this?
How can you say that? It made no sense.
You are supporting the more pro-war, the more pro-fascist police state wing, the more pro-starving the third world wing of the ruling class.
Seriously, he's never once provided an example of how Republicans, in general, or the ones he specifically likes to mention, who happen to be the anti-Semitic ones, the openly anti-Semitic ones, the ones who are just like openly pro-neo-Nazi. He's never explained where they actually have ever shown any concern for the people of the third world, or specifically the people of Africa, because obviously they don't give a shit.
Class. Trump is awful. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a Republican.
Yes, you fucking are, though. Like, just be honest. He's not a conservative. He's just been defending them vehemently for something like 30 minutes now. Yes, you are. Just fucking say it.
Republican, but
yes, you are.
The section of the ruling class that you are supporting.
This is the Tim Pool move. This is the whole Tim Pool move. Where Tim Pool does this whole thing where he claims he's a liberal, but he's disillusioned with the far left politics of, Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein and shit. And therefore he reluctantly supports everything that Trump does and everything that neo-Nazis do and stuff. And this is literally, he's just doing this, and he's just doing it, and he manages to make it even less hinged.
Is the more dangerous section. They are actively talking about starving and depopulating the third world, Sincera.
The third world is already starving.
They want more weapons. Marjorie...
What, you think the Republicans want fewer weapons? This is one of the things you're like listing things they all agree on.
Taylor Greene is more anti-war than any Democrat.
Which is really easy because she's not anti-war and neither are the Democrats. There's like no such thing as anti-war politics in the U.S. political class because the U.S. political class is founded on the understanding that the U.S. has to be at war with the rest of the world all the time in order to discipline people locally, make money, open up markets and shit like that. I mean, there's literally this idea that there's ever an anti-war candidate within the political establishment, it's just nonsense.
This is infuriating. You're invoking the anti-war movement to tell us that we should support Biden in a divide in the ruling class?
No, she literally didn't say that. Like, she said lots of fucking horrible things. She said a bunch of just absolutely shitty stuff, most of which you celebrated, Caleb. Most of which you totally agreed with and applauded. But she's literally not saying the thing you're attributing to her now.
Class Biden's more pro-war.
Panther Party leaders, because other anti-war leaders were more popular than the president among the military. And so there were all kinds of units that wouldn't go out and fight anymore. And they couldn't deploy their...
And why do you think they're trying to wokeify the military right now? Because
she's talking about Vietnam.
Many people in the military don't want new wars.
Like, okay, how are we defining woke in this context, Caleb? I know that you can't seem to agree on a definition with yourself. You're in constant conflict with yourself on what the fucking term means. But what the fuck?
Who's the leading anti-war voice in the mainstream? Tulsi Gabbard.
No, she isn't. She isn't even anti-war. She isn't even against U.S. imperialist wars. She's backed most of them.
Who's also a TERF, critical of the trans issue.
Critical of the trans issue, yeah. And she's pro-Israel. And she's very anti-Muslim. And all sorts of other wonderful things. Oh, and she supports Modi as well.
You're on the wrong side.
You can have, in a time like this when the norms are being ripped up, you actually have splits
I don't think the norms are actually being ripped up.
in their institutions. You saw dimensions of this with the overturning of Roe as well.
Yes.
That wasn't an example of the norms being ripped up, because that's just the norm. The norm is that competing political majorities on the Supreme Court will take things in different directions. And so, if you have a group of sort of generally liberal people in as a majority in the Supreme Court, they're gonna tend to be within that general ideological universe. And if you have a bunch of, and if the majority's reactionary, it's gonna tend in that direction. That's been how the fucking courts work the whole time.
That is true. And you're on the wrong side.
U.S. veterans, female veterans, they said, I fought for this country, I served this country. They came back and they burned their uniforms when that right got taken away. They said, what did I fight for?
Well, you didn't fight for that. Like, did you actually think you were fighting for your abortion rights in Afghanistan? Like, how is that going
I'm
to
treated
work?
as a second-class citizen. What is this country? You start to see the contours of how you could actually break apart and weaken there. You still are going to have a fight.
Yes, but the Biden administration is strengthening the state. The people breaking apart the state.
Are the cops not the state now? Okay, it is time now to wrap it up. Thank you to everyone who's joined. Good to see you, Phoenix, Adam, et al. And if you enjoyed the stream, please consider paying for the stream, which you can do with the tip command, which also contributes to the first full-length English translation of Alexandra Kollontái's social basis of the female question, which is currently underway. I will be back tomorrow, next week on Friday at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, and I look forward to seeing you then.